The story will be focused on Soichiro Takakura, who was an orphan. His mom left him from the day he was born, and when he was 17 years old, his dad left him too. But he never felt lonely, thanks to a very cute cat that he found on the day his dad passed away. He called it Pete. Soichiro was adopted by a relative from his father's side, named Koichi. Koichi has a daughter, named Riko Matsushita. Soichiro learned about machine engineering from Koichi, and he mastered it well. But unfortunately, Koichi and his wife died because the plane they were on crashed. Riko was a junior high school student then. So, to continue on her studies, her uncle, Kazuto, brought her to move into his house. On March 1, 1995, the news about Soichiro, who had succeeded in making an artificial intelligence robot, named A1, had spread across all the television media. A1 was a house helper robot that has a skill to evolve and to learn every single new thing its owner told to. A1 was made under the auspices of Kazuto's company, Future Works Enterprise or FWE. At the same time, when the snow was falling outside, Pete, the cat, asked Soichiro to open every door in the house so it could find a warm place, like summer. It's impossible, but Soichiro always did what Pete asked him, because Pete never gave up. Riko came often to Soichiro's house to help him with the house chores, and then that day, she said that in a week later, she had to move to a boarding house of senior high school, so she said she couldn't come to Soichiro's house too often just like she used to. But Soichiro said that she didn't need to be sad, she still could come to his house during summer vacation. At his house, it seems that Soichiro was so busy with his new project, making a sophisticated battery that doesn't need to be recharged, so it can be put into his robot, to make it always on active mode. This project was the late Koichi's idea, and Soichiro tried to complete it to make Koichi's dream come true, where robots and humans could live side by side. Meanwhile, Soichiro's girlfriend, who also his assistant, Rin Shirase, came to the house to bring some documents that Soichiro needed to sign. It looked like Riko didn't like her, so when Riko saw her, she left the house immediately. The documents Shirase brought was about the transfer of shares of FWE from Soichiro to Shirase. This transfer would get her promoted to an executive of FWE. Soichiro made this decision purely by his own request. He thought that she was quite competent to run the company in the future. After all the documents were signed, Shirase kissed him passionately. A week later, Soichi came to his office, and he found out that Kazuto suddenly held a shareholders board meeting to launch A1 robot earlier than planned, to beat their business competitor by selling its patent to another company named Manix Enterprise. By doing so, he could get more funds. Soichiro was against this plan. He said that they needed, at least, a third model to release the robot to the market. Shirase was aware that there are differences of opinion between Soichiro and Kazuto, so she suggested to make a proposal voting, and this took Soichi by surprise when he heard that Shirase, who held a third of the shares, agreed to Kazuto's plan. If they made it to this plan, it means Soichiro was officially kicked from the company and he couldn't use any facilities and equipment belonged to the company. In the end, Soichiro realized that he was framed. Soichiro went back to his house, full of anger, and found all of his equipment had been taken by the company. A moment later, Riko came by the house to say goodbye to Soichi. She was so shocked when she saw the house. It was so messy, and there was Soichiro drinking alcohol and looking depressed. Riko decided to cancel her plan to move into the boarding house, and she chose to be with Soichiro when she knew it was Kazuto's doing. Feeling so helpless, Soichiro said no to her. He said she couldn't help him no matter what. Riko was hurt by his words, and she decided to leave him. At the same time, Soichiro found a brochure of a cryosleep program run by a company named Credius. Credius was a company that provided a service to someone who wants to be put to sleep and to be woken up in 5 to 30 years later. Without thinking, Soichiro then took Pete from his house and decided to be put together in cryosleep. He also asked his lawyer to transfer his share of FWE to Riko, then she could have all of his shares when she turns 20 years old. Unfortunately, the doctor found there was a high alcohol level in Soichiro's body, and he found that Soichiro was depressed. The doctor said he couldn't proceed with Soichiro's request and asked him to come back again tomorrow when he was sober up, and asked him to rethink his decision. In the next scene, we find Riko, who just came to Kazuto's house. She overheard the conversation between Kazuto and Shirase about their plan to give the plasma battery to another technician. She also overheard about the truck company that seized everything from Soichiro's house that went missing. Riko went upstairs to call Soichiro and wanted to tell him about this, but she got no answer from him. She ran back to Soichiro's house and Kazuto saw her and felt something was wrong with her. He checked the phone and dialed the last number she called, and found out that she was trying to call Soichiro. He ran after her to catch her. Meanwhile, Soichiro was on the way to Kazuto House to talk to Shirazi. He asked her to give him back all his research equipment. Otherwise, he told her that he will report all their wrongdoings and that would be no good for them, because it would cause a bad reputation to the company. Upon hearing that, Shirazi said she'll give up, but when she had a chance, she shot the drug to Soichiro. Pete was there too. It was in the bag, it jumped to her and accidentally hurt her. Shirazi was so angry and she tried to catch it, but she heard the sound of the broken window and Pete disappeared along with someone in Soichiro's car. This made her think that Soroichi was here with someone else, but she couldn't ask him about that, because Soichiro was lying on the floor, unconscious. She was so confused at that time, and unexpectedly found the brochure about cryosleep and the crazy idea came to her. She intentionally put Soichiro in a cryosleep capsule run by Mannix Enterprise. Shirazi told him that she worked for Mannix Enterprise before, to help them evade taxes. Then the cryosleep capsule was activated and put Soroichi to sleep for the next 30 years. In the other place, someone came to pick Riko up. It was the same person who drove Soichiro's car from Kazuto House. Riko was so shocked when she saw that person. 30 years have passed by. Soichiro woke up from his cryosleep and found himself in the futuristic hospital. There was a doctor who was once with him at Cretias 30 years ago, but that doctor told him it was his father who worked at Cretias 30 years ago. It wasn't him. Still puzzled, Soichiro asked where Pete was, but a robotic humanoid named Pete came instead. Pete the cat. He would take care of Soichiro through his recovery in the next 5 days. The worst of all, Soichiro now has no assets at all, because Mannix Enterprise and FWE went bankrupt in the last 30 years. Nevertheless, he still got financial aid from his cryosleep compensation even though it wasn't that much, and at last he received the address from someone named Riko, who often asked when Soichiro would be woken up. The day after, Soichiro ran away from the hospital, with only his recorder and wallet in his hands. He tried to catch a taxi, but none of it came. Suddenly Pete came by his side and told him that he needed an application to get a taxi. Soichiro got more confused when he found out that the taxi drove itself without the driver. In the taxi, Soichiro told Pete to get out, but he said no. He said that he just ran away from the hospital. Pete claimed that there was a misshape within his system that made his exploration trait overreacted and made his curiosity on the same level as a human. Pete purposely followed Soichiro, because he knew that Soichiro was a robot maker, so if he had a problem, he believed Soichiro could fix it. Pete threw Soichiro's wallet and told him that everything was run by smartphone nowadays. When they arrived at Riko's address, Soichiro was startled when he saw the house. It was so dirty and a mess. That house was not Riko's house but Shirazi's, who looked so fat and poor. She intentionally disguised herself as Riko, so Soichi would come to her house. Later on, she told Soichi that a year after he was put to cryosleep, Kazuto died of diabetic complications, and all the company's shares were acquisitioned by another company. At that time, a mysterious man came to her and leaked the secret about her actions, helping Mannix Enterprise to evade taxes and put her in jail. Meanwhile, Mannix Enterprise slowly went bankrupt. She blamed him for everything and she felt happy when she told him that Riko died in a fire that happened in his house the night she shot him with a drug. Even though her body couldn't be found, she said that Kazuto clearly saw that fire when it was happening. Her words crushed his heart. Then he went to Riko's grave to mourn his beloved little sister. While reminiscing all his memories with Riko and Pete the cat, Soichiro was motivated to find the mysterious man that Shirazi was talking about and to find out what caused Riko's death. With Pete's help, they went to the library to look up articles on the internet and they found out that FWE had been acquired by a company called Guardian Manufacturing. At the same time, suddenly Pete wanted to activate his sleep mode to regenerate himself. This was an opportunity for Soichiro to ask Pete where he got his energy source. Soichiro was surprised when he knew that Pete got his energy sources from a plasma battery, a semi-permanent source of energy that he was unable to complete 30 years ago. Furthermore, Pete told him that he was a product from Aladdin Industry, which is now a lead in the robot market. Soichiro and Pete went to Guardian Manufacturing to meet the CEO, but the robot secretary refused to let him meet the CEO. But when he said that his name is Soichiro Takakura, a designer of L1 robot, she let him in to meet Guardian Manufacturing's CEO, Gaotsuboi. Gaotsuboi was so happy when he met Soichiro, and this made him so confused, especially when Gata told him that he knew that Soichiro was a plasma battery creator, who gave its exclusive right to the Aladdin Industry. Gata then showed him a book that Soichiro signed for him when he was an elementary school student. He later told Soichiro that he signed that book when he visited his family restaurant with Professor Toy. Professor Toy was then taken to prison for embezzling university funds to finance his research on time machines. Despite all the things he couldn't remember, Soichiro believed that there was someone deliberately using his identity to complete his research on plasma batteries. Later on, Soichiro found that someone had transferred all his shares to a man named Sato Taro. Sato Taro was one of the Aladdin Industry founders who was also a lawyer of the patent right, pointed out by Soichiro himself. From Aladdin's data, it was also known that Soichiro was the designer of the first model of Pete the Robot. It was also written that Rico 1 was the one who developed the second model, and so on. From all the things he found, Soichiro then realized something. He and Pete went to Professor Toy's laboratorium, who was overjoyed when he saw Soichiro. Here everything was revealed. It was Soichiro himself who asked Professor Toy to complete his research on the time machine so he could go back to his time. Without taking any time, Professor Toy, who had completed his research on the time machine, using the energy from the plasma battery, asked Soichiro to return to his time, 30 years ago. He gave him some gold bars and asked Soichiro to give that gold bar to Professor Toy in the past, so he could fund his research. When Soichiro was ready on the time machine and said his goodbye, suddenly Pete jumped and hugged Soichiro, and unexpectedly Pete was brought back to 30 years ago. Soichiro and Pete got to a place where they met a man called Sato Taro. Sato then brought them to his house. When Soichiro was awake, Sato said that Pete had already explained everything to him, about them who came from the future and what Soichiro would be doing in this time. He sold all the gold bars to support Soichiro's plan. It was February 28, 1995, a day before the announcement of how one robot was broadcasted on the television. So, Soichiro tried to complete his blueprint of the plasma battery's design in just a week. On the next day, Soichiro went to Tsuboi's restaurant to meet Professor Toy and gave him all the money he got from selling the gold bar. At first, Professor Toy could not accept the money. He was so skeptical and didn't believe Soichiro's story telling him that he came from the future thanks to his invention. But there was news about Soichiro on television that day about Soichiro making the A1 robot. Thanks to the news, Professor Toy believed him and took the money Soichiro offered him. At the same time, a son of the restaurant owner, who recognized Soichiro's face from the television, came and asked Soichiro to sign his book. That boy was the one and the only guy who will become the owner of Guardian in the future. In the evening, while accompanying Soichiro, Sato asked him why he changed the name of A1 robot to Pete 1. He then told him that he changed it intentionally because he was inspired by his cat who loves the summer. This was the beginning of Pete, who later grew to another Pete until Pete 13, who is now helping him. In the middle of that conversation, Soichiro asked Sato to help him and revealed Shirazi's crime of helping Mannix Enterprise to evade taxes. As a token of appreciation, Soichiro promised to give him his shares from FWE and an exclusive right to the plasma battery's design, so in the future, Sato can make his own company, which is later on named Aladdin Industry. Soichiro also asked him to let his sister, Rico, move into his house and live with him. Sato agreed to his request. He told him that he and his wife always wanted a child in their home. The time has passed and the day where Soichiro was betrayed by Shirazi and Kazuto came. Pete then went to stop the truck that seized all the equipment and research data from Soichiro's house. Now we know why that truck never made his way back to the company. On the other hand, Soichiro, who had completed all his design of the plasma battery, went to Kazuto's house. He saw Shirazi, who tried to shoot a drug at him. Later on, he broke the window, took Pete the cat to his car, and ran away from there. Soichiro then went back to his home to find Rico, and at the same time, the truck that brought all his equipment had arrived. It was Soichiro's revelation that surprised Rico. Rico didn't know that this Soichiro is the one who came from the future. Soichiro then drove his car and hit the house. He orchestrated something to burn and blow the house. This was an explosion that made Kazuto believe that Rico was dead, caused by fire. So, in the future, when Shirazi told Soichiro about this accident, we know why they never found Rico's body. Upon arriving at Sato's house, Soichiro introduced Rico to Sato's family. There was Midori, Sato's wife, who warmly welcomed her. After getting to know each other, Soichiro said his goodbye to his sister and talked to Pete, who promised to wait for Soichiro, because the day after, Soichiro went to Cretias to take his cryosleep appointment, to be put to sleep for the next 30 years. From that moment, Rico, who got motivated by her brother, studied diligently and made it to develop the second generation of Pete the Robot, and the next generation of Pete 10 years later. Rico then decided to take a cryosleep appointment and she planned to be woken up in the next 20 years. 30 years had passed. Soichiro woke up, and there he found not only Pete the robot but also Pete the cat and of course, Rico, who at the same time, just woke up from her cryosleep.